This happened a few years ago during a long winter drive towards Seattle. I had been on the road for nearly 14 hours, pushing through miles of empty highway, surrounded by nothing but endless stretches of snow-covered land. I never liked booking hotels in advance. There was always something available, and I preferred choosing a place once I reached an area that felt right. But that day, something felt off. Throughout the drive, my phone kept buzzing with weather alerts, warnings about a severe snowstorm rapidly building ahead. Strong winds, heavy snowfall, whiteout conditions. Still, I kept going. At first, it didn't seem too bad. Around 5 p.m., the storm began to intensify. Snow started falling thicker, the wind howled louder, and my car no longer felt as stable on the road. Within 30 minutes, the highway emptied completely. No headlights, no passing cars, no signs of life. Just me, alone, driving straight into a growing storm. By the time the sun disappeared behind the horizon, the world turned into a swirling, suffocating white void. That's when a deep unease settled in my chest. I realized I shouldn't keep going. I needed to stop. I checked nearby options, but there was almost nothing around. The closest towns were over an hour away, and a small roadside motel I found was already closed. That's when I saw it. A small cabin rental just off the highway. It didn't look official. No reviews, barely any photos, just a few exterior shots. But it was available for the night, and I didn't have many choices. So I booked it.
A few minutes later, I turned off the highway onto a narrow gravel path, barely visible under the snow. The cabin appeared through the storm like a shadow, small, isolated, and strangely lifeless. I parked quickly, grabbed my bag, and rushed to the door as the wind cut through me like knives. Using the code from the booking, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. And immediately, something felt wrong. The cabin was tiny, barely 200 square feet. A single open room, no kitchen, just a bed, a chair, and a small wood-burning stove in the corner. But what truly unsettled me was the condition of the place. It wasn't trashed, it was worse. It looked abandoned. A thin layer of dust covered everything, as if no one had stepped foot inside for months. The air felt stale, heavy, almost suffocating. The dim lighting cast long, distorted shadows across the walls, making the space feel even smaller, almost like it was closing in on me. I set my bag down slowly, scanning the room. Something about the silence felt unnatural. Outside, the storm suddenly intensified, wind slamming against the cabin walls, snow hitting the windows like handfuls of sand. For a moment, I stood there listening. Then I noticed something else. It was freezing inside. The only source of heat was the small wood stove in the corner. Thankfully, there was already chopped wood stacked beside it. I quickly lit a fire, watching as the flames flickered to life, casting a faint orange glow across the dusty room. Still, the uneasiness didn't go away. It only grew stronger. I sat down on the bed, trying to relax, telling myself I was just overthinking. The storm, the isolation, the long drive, It was getting to me. Eventually, I lay back and closed my eyes, and without realizing it, I fell asleep. I don't know how long I was asleep. It didn't feel like I woke up suddenly. It was more like something slowly pulled me out of sleep. A strange awareness crept in first, then the sound. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. An alarm. At first, I couldn't tell where it was coming from. The storm outside was still raging, the wind howling violently, shaking the cabin walls. But underneath all that noise, there it was again, a muffled, repetitive beeping. My heart sank. It was my car. I sat up immediately, my body tense. For a second, I just listened, hoping I was wrong. But no, that was definitely my car alarm. I quickly grabbed my coat and rushed to the door. The moment I stepped outside, the storm hit me like a wall. The wind nearly knocked me off balance, and the snow stung my face like needles. Visibility was almost zero. Through the blizzard, I could barely make out my car, its headlights flashing, the alarm screaming into the storm. I fumbled for my keys and pressed the unlock button. Nothing. The alarm kept going. I tried again. Still nothing. "Come on," I muttered under my breath, panic starting to creep in. Struggling against the wind, I pushed forward and reached the car. Snow had already started piling up around it. I grabbed the handle and yanked the door open, and froze. There was snow inside. Not just a little dusting, actual snow scattered across the driver's seat, like the door had been open. But I had locked it. I was sure of it. A cold, heavy feeling dropped into my stomach. Slowly, I turned my head. At first, I saw nothing but white. The storm swallowed everything beyond a few feet. But then, a shape, standing still, about 10 feet away, right at the edge where the forest began. My breath caught in my throat. It was a man. I couldn't see his face. The snow and darkness blurred everything into a vague silhouette, but I could tell he was just standing there, watching, not moving, not speaking, just there. A surge of pure terror hit me. I tried to shout, but my voice came out weak, almost choked by the cold air and fear tightening my chest. Without thinking, I slammed the car door shut and ran. I didn't look back. I just ran straight for the cabin, nearly slipping on the snow, my heart pounding violently in my ears. I burst inside, locked the door, and backed away from it. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I rushed to the window, straining my eyes to see through the storm. But there was nothing. No figure, no movement, just endless white. "What the hell was that?" I whispered. My mind raced. There was no way that man just happened to be out there. Not in this storm, not in the middle of nowhere. He had been at my car. He had opened it, set off the alarm. But why? A horrifying thought crept in. Was he trying to trap me here? Disable my car? Make sure I couldn't leave? My hands started shaking. I grabbed my phone and immediately dialed 911. It rang. Once. Twice. Then the call dropped. No. I tried again. Same result. On the third attempt, I actually heard a voice on the other end. 911, what's your... The line cut out. Dead. The storm was killing the signal. Panic fully set in now. I kept calling over and over, desperately trying to get through, but every attempt failed. Either it wouldn't connect, or it would drop within seconds. I was completely alone, cut off, and that man, he was still out there. Suddenly, the car alarm went off again.
I flinched violently at the sound. This time, I didn't move. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the door. The alarm screamed through the storm for several minutes, each second stretched painfully long, my imagination filling in terrifying possibilities of what he might be doing out there. Then, it stopped. Silence. Only the wind remained. 10 minutes passed, maybe more. I didn't dare move, but deep down, I knew something. This wasn't over. Not even close.
The silence didn't last. At first, it was just the wind again, howling, relentless, pressing against the thin cabin walls. But then, through the whiteout outside the window, I saw it. A shape, slowly forming, coming closer. My chest tightened as the figure emerged from the storm. It was him, the man. This time, he wasn't standing still. He was walking toward the cabin, deliberately, calmly, like he knew exactly where I was and that I had nowhere to go. I immediately stepped back from the window, my heart hammering violently. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to hide. A few seconds later, thud. Heavy boots hit the wooden porch. I froze. Then came the knock. Slow, steady, not aggressive, not rushed, just controlled. Like he had all the time in the world. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't make a sound. Another knock, louder this time. Still, I stayed silent. After a moment, the knocking stopped. I heard his boots shift, then crunch through the snow as he stepped off the porch. My stomach dropped. He wasn't leaving. He was going around the cabin. I quickly moved along the wall, keeping low, making sure I stayed out of sight from the windows. Then, the footsteps stopped, right outside one of the windows. I could feel it. He was there, watching. Even without seeing him, I knew. And then I heard it, a low, soft sound. At first, I couldn't understand what it was, but then it became clearer. He was humming, a quiet, almost cheerful hum, completely out of place in that freezing, violent storm. It sent chills straight down my spine. He moved again, slow footsteps circling the cabin, window to window. At one point, he tapped lightly on the glass. Another window, a soft knock, then more humming, like this was some kind of game to him, like he was enjoying it. I pressed myself against the wall, barely daring to breathe. My entire body felt locked in place, trapped between fear and disbelief. Minutes felt like hours. Then suddenly, it stopped. No footsteps, no humming, nothing. Just the storm. I didn't move for what felt like forever. I was too scared to even check. Then, faintly, through the storm, I saw flashing lights, red and blue. Relief hit me so hard I almost collapsed. A police officer pulled up outside the cabin. I rushed to the door and opened it, nearly stumbling into the snow as I waved them down. I can't even describe the relief I felt in that moment. The officer explained that they had received multiple emergency call attempts from my phone. Even though the calls kept dropping, they were able to trace the location and send someone to check. But the man, he was gone, like he had never been there. The only thing left behind were footprints in the snow, circling the cabin, then leading straight into the forest. No car, no tracks, nothing else. They checked my vehicle. Nothing was stolen, nothing damaged.
It was like he had only triggered the alarm just to get me outside, just to let me know he was there. That night never made sense, and it still doesn't. But one thing I know for sure, I made it to Seattle the next day, and I have never, ever stayed in a remote cabin like that again.